In a world obsessed with perfection, we are taught from a young age to hide our mistakes, cover up our flaws, and present a polished version of ourselves to the world. But what if everything we have been told about perfection is wrong? What if the very cracks and imperfections we try to conceal are actually the most powerful parts of who we are? This is where the ancient Japanese philosophy of Kintsugi comes in. Kintsugi is not just an art form, it is a mindset. It teaches that broken objects, when repaired with gold, do not lose their value. Instead, they become more unique, more beautiful, and more meaningful than they were before. Every crack tells a story, every flaw carries a lesson, and every imperfection has the potential to transform into a source of strength. Today, we are going to explore how this timeless wisdom can be applied not just to ceramics, but to our own lives. Imagine your setbacks, failures, and painful experiences as the cracks in a precious cup. Instead of hiding them, what if you could fill them with your own gold, turning every hardship into resilience, every mistake into insight, and every moment of struggle into a stepping stone toward a stronger, more authentic you? By the end of this video, you will see that imperfections are not limitations, they are opportunities. You will discover how embracing your cracks can make you not only stronger, but truly unstoppable. If this message resonates with you, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of our upcoming videos. And do not forget to leave a comment sharing your own story of turning a crack in your life into gold. We would love to hear from you. Now, let us dive into the transformative world of Kintsugi, where imperfection is not something to fear, but a secret source of power waiting to be uncovered. Liam was the kind of architect everyone admired, a rising star whose work had been featured in prestigious design magazines, whose name inspired confidence, and whose career seemed unstoppable. His life was a careful composition of precision, ambition, and control, and he had spent years building a reputation that made him feel invincible. But one afternoon, everything he had painstakingly crafted began to crumble. He had poured his heart, his time, and his resources into what he believed would be the pinnacle of his career, a cultural center meant to define his legacy. The presentation to the city council had been rehearsed 100 times, each word and gesture meticulously designed to convince them of the brilliance of his vision. And yet, in a single moment, all of that effort was missed with a phrase that seemed almost casual. "This is not what we are looking for." For Liam, the rejection was more than professional, it was deeply personal. He returned home in a daze, unable to lift himself from his bed, as though the weight of the collapse had shattered something inside him far beyond the visible failure. Days passed in a blur, and he tried to resume his routines, attempted to hide the disappointment, and avoided any questions about the project. The perfect image he had so carefully maintained had been fractured, and in his mind, every crack grew larger with the act of pretending nothing had happened. He could not escape the shadow of failure. The project haunted him in every corner of his life, and his creativity felt stifled under its weight. It was during this period of quiet despair that his mother, recognizing the depth of his struggle, introduced him to a lesson he would never forget. She picked up his favorite teacup, the one he had used every morning, and deliberately let it fall to the floor, shattering it into fragments. Liam watched, stunned, as she smiled and whispered a single word: "Kintsugi." At first, he could not understand. Why focus on a broken cup? Why not simply replace it and move on? But as she guided him through the process of repairing the porcelain with lacquer and gold, a transformation began, not in the cup, but within him. Every golden seam highlighted the history of the break, celebrated the fragility that had once seemed so shameful, and turned it into something extraordinary. Through hours of careful reconstruction, Liam began to see the metaphor within the technique. The rejected project, the sleepless nights, The crushing disappointment, they were his cracks. And just as the cup had become more valuable through the gold that filled its fractures, his failure could become the foundation for something far more unique than the path of perfection he had once pursued. The act of acknowledging the break, rather than hiding it, allowed him to embrace vulnerability, confront the discomfort of imperfection, and gradually transform the paralyzing fear of failure into a deliberate, powerful strength. As the cup neared completion, Liam felt a shift in perspective. He understood that his setbacks did not define the end of his story, they were the raw material for a new chapter. The broken edges were not flaws to disguise, but lines along which he could apply his own gold, revealing resilience and authenticity that no unbroken success could ever convey. This lesson became a turning point, teaching him that the path to growth and originality is not paved with perfection, but with courage, acceptance, and the willingness to rebuild in a way that celebrates every crack and fracture along the way. Liam's journey with Kintsugi showed him that failure was not a full stop, but a punctuation mark, guiding him toward a life in which imperfection became a signature of creativity and a testament to the power of embracing what had once seemed broken beyond repair. As Liam carefully applied the gold lacquer to the broken teacup, he began to realize that the beauty of Kintsugi did not lie in returning the object to its original state, as if nothing had ever happened, but in embracing its fractures and transforming them into something entirely new. Each crack, once a mark of damage or loss, now became a vein of light, a story etched in gold that could never be replicated. This was a revelation that extended far beyond ceramics, reaching into the very fabric of his life and career. Liam had spent years chasing flawless designs, elegant lines, and perfect execution, but perfection had proven brittle, unable to withstand the unforeseen pressures and judgments of the world. The moment of his project's rejection had shattered more than his work. It had cracked the very identity he had built around his success. And yet, through Kintsugi, he saw that brokenness was not an end, but a beginning. With each careful stroke of gold, Liam's perspective shifted. He understood that trying to return to what had been the imagined perfection of the cultural center before it was rejected was a futile endeavor. The past could not be restored, nor should it be, because the experience of breaking, of facing failure and disappointment, had changed him irreversibly. The teacup, once whole, was now more unique than any pristine copy, carrying in its veins the history of its fracture. In the same way, Liam's professional setback could become the foundation for innovation, for creativity that incorporated the lessons learned from failure. The cracks were not weaknesses to hide. They were opportunities to build something richer, more authentic, and infinitely more compelling than the version he had hoped to preserve. As days passed, Liam began to see this philosophy applied in subtle, profound ways throughout his own work. When he revisited the rejected design, he no longer sought to erase the critiques or cover up the aspects that had been dismissed. Instead, he deliberately integrated the feedback into the new design, allowing the original flaws to inform every choice he made. The building's structure, once rigid and conventional, became dynamic and expressive, each element acknowledging the journey it had undergone rather than pretending the struggle had never existed. Just as the teacup's golden seams told a story of resilience and transformation, the redesigned cultural center began to tell a narrative of growth and authenticity that resonated far more deeply with both colleagues and the community. Liam's understanding of Kintsugi also influenced how he approached his personal life. He no longer avoided mistakes or hid moments of vulnerability, recognizing that the process of embracing and learning from his fractures made him stronger, more relatable, and more capable of navigating uncertainty. The philosophy revealed that trying to revert to a former, unbroken state was a limitation, a denial of the transformative potential inherent in life's challenges. True value emerged not from erasing scars but from highlighting them. integrating them into a broader, richer narrative that could not exist without the experience of breaking. By the time the teacup was complete, Liam realized that Kintsugi had given him a new lens through which to see every failure, every disappointment, and every fracture in his journey. The cracks were no longer a source of shame, but a blueprint for growth, a guide for creating something new and valuable that carried the depth of lived experience. In embracing this philosophy, Liam understood that the true artistry of life lay not in avoiding damage, but in using the gold of insight, courage, and resilience to transform brokenness into brilliance, leaving behind a legacy that was richer, more human, and impossible to ignore. Once Liam had fully embraced the philosophy of Kintsugi, he realized that the true power of his transformation did not lie solely in the teacup or in the lessons of design, but in how openly he could share his journey with others. Previously, he had hidden his failures, masking rejection and setbacks with the veneer of success, believing that vulnerability would undermine his reputation. Yet, as he began to reveal the story behind the broken teacup, the countless hours of labor, the frustration and despair that had accompanied his failed project, something remarkable began to happen. People stopped seeing him as someone fragile or defeated. They began to see him as someone real, someone who had endured, learned, and grown. The cracks in his life, once a source of shame, had become the most compelling part of his story. When Liam shared the narrative of his rejected cultural center, including the raw emotions of disappointment, the solitude of days spent questioning his abilities, and the painstaking process of reconstruction, he noticed responses he had never anticipated. Fellow architects, business partners, and even strangers reached out not to pity him, but to connect, to share their own struggles, and to seek guidance. What he had once thought would be a mark of weakness had become a bridge of trust. People were drawn to the authenticity he displayed, to the courage it took to expose imperfections while still standing tall. They recognized that someone willing to show the fractures in their path also possessed the insight and resilience to navigate future challenges. And that recognition sparked opportunities that would never have appeared if he had remained silent. Liam began to see a new rhythm in his professional life, one where openness about mistakes became a source of collaboration rather than isolation. Investors who might have been wary of someone with a past failure were intrigued by his transparency, understanding that someone who had endured setbacks with clarity and integrity brought a depth of experience that could not be taught. Clients who had previously overlooked him began to trust his judgment, knowing that his designs carried not just technical skill but the wisdom gained from confronting adversity. Even within his team, the willingness to discuss errors and lessons learned fostered a culture of honesty, creativity, and innovation that surpassed anything achieved under a mask of perfection. This revelation extended far beyond business. It shaped how Liam engaged with life itself. By embracing failure and sharing the insights drawn from it, he found that every encounter, every project, and every relationship gained new depth. The very act of showing his cracks and the gold that filled them inspired others to confront their own vulnerabilities, to embrace their failures as opportunities rather than burdens, and to recognize that resilience is more compelling than flawless execution. Liam understood that the visibility of his struggles did not diminish him. It amplified his presence, creating a resonance that connected him with people on a profoundly human level. Through this journey, Liam discovered that failures, when acknowledged and learned from, become catalysts for growth and connection. The gold he had used to mend broken ceramics became a metaphor for the trust, inspiration, and unforeseen opportunities that emerge when one dares to be authentic. He learned that showing what has broken us, and the lessons we carry forward, transforms perceived weaknesses into magnets for meaningful relationships and life-changing prospects. In embracing the power of vulnerability, Liam not only rebuilt his own life but illuminated a path for others, demonstrating that the courage to reveal our flaws is the very thing that can unlock doors we never imagined existed, turning brokenness into a shared source of strength and opportunity. As Liam continued to explore the philosophy of Kintsugi, he realized that the way we choose to repair what has been broken in our lives defines not only our resilience but also the uniqueness of our journey. Each fracture, each failure, offers a choice. We can attempt to hide it, smooth it over, and pretend nothing happened, or we can embrace it, transforming the scar into something meaningful. The gold in Kintsugi is not simply a material, it is a metaphor for the method, the intention, and the creativity with which we mend our own lives. Some people find their gold through humor, taking the bitterest experiences and shaping them into laughter that heals both themselves and others, turning pain into shared joy. Others seek wisdom, extracting lessons from every setback, allowing insights gained through struggle to guide decisions and illuminate paths that would have remained hidden without adversity. There are those who channel their scars into art, creating expressions that resonate with others, turning personal suffering into beauty that communicates truths words cannot capture. Transparency, too, is a form of gold, a deliberate choice to reveal one's journey openly, allowing authenticity to become the bridge that connects people and fosters trust. Empathy and opportunity. Liam saw these choices vividly in his own life as he reconstructed the lessons from his rejected cultural center and the shattered teacup his mother had broken. He realized that simply moving on without reflection would leave the cracks invisible, uncelebrated, and the potential of growth untapped. Instead, by consciously choosing his gold, he transformed the narrative of failure into a source of identity and strength. Each action, each decision to engage with adversity creatively, imbued his work and life with a texture that was impossible to replicate. When he shared these stories with colleagues and aspiring architects, the impact was immediate. They were inspired not by perfection, but by the courage and creativity embedded in his reconstruction. It became clear that strength does not emerge from never breaking, but from the intentionality with which we respond to the breaks that inevitably occur. The teacup, now lined with veins of gold, served as a daily reminder that the method of repair shapes the value of the whole. Liam recognized that humor could lighten the heaviest moments, wisdom could guide through uncertainty, art could transform suffering into beauty, and transparency could foster connection and opportunity. The choices were not mutually exclusive. The richness came from integrating multiple forms of gold, using each to illuminate different facets of brokenness and resilience. Over time, Liam found that this philosophy changed how he approached every project, every relationship, and every setback. Where once he feared the judgment of flaws, he now embraced them, knowing that the way he responded, the gold he applied, would determine the power and singularity of what emerged. Through Kintsugi, Liam understood that adversity is not merely an obstacle, but a medium through which life reveals its deepest potential. The fractures, the failures, and the disappointments are not marks of inadequacy. They are the lines along which gold can flow, defining strength, creativity, and authenticity. Every choice of repair carries intention and expression, and the life rebuilt with conscious gold becomes not only stronger but unmistakably unique. By embracing the philosophy that how we mend ourselves shapes the outcome, Liam discovered a profound truth. The value of our lives is not in avoiding breaks, but in the beauty, insight, and power that emerge when we choose our gold wisely, allowing the cracks to shine as a testament to endurance, courage, and transformation. As Liam reflected on the journey that had begun with a shattered project and a broken teacup, he came to understand that true power was never about perfection. It had never been about flawlessly executed designs or a flawless reputation that masked every mistake. Real strength, he realized, emerged from the willingness to confront what had broken him, to sit with the discomfort of failure, and to actively transform those fractures into sources of insight and growth. The golden veins in the teacup were more than decoration, they were a metaphor for life itself. A tangible reminder that every crack carried the potential for transformation. Every setback could be molded into resilience, and every failure contained the seeds of wisdom. By choosing to embrace his cracks, Liam had not only rebuilt his work and career, but had reshaped the very way he approached life. Relationships and creativity. He began to see that failures were not endpoints but opportunities to integrate lessons into the fabric of his story. The rejection of the cultural center was no longer a mark of shame. It was the foundation for a more innovative and authentic design, one that carried history, intention, and human insight within every decision. Sharing that process openly with the world revealed a paradox. The more vulnerable he became, the stronger and more respected he appeared. People were drawn not to someone who claimed invincibility, but to someone who had endured, reflected, and emerged more capable and human because of it. Investors, colleagues, students, and clients alike responded to authenticity, demonstrating that courage in vulnerability creates connection, trust, and unexpected opportunity. Liam's journey also highlighted a universal truth. Everyone has cracks. Every person experiences setbacks, disappointments, and moments of doubt. What differentiates those who grow from those who falter is not the absence of fractures, but the decision to use them wisely. The gold we choose to fill our cracks may take the form of wisdom, humor, creativity, openness, or compassion. It is the conscious act of transforming brokenness into meaning, the willingness to learn from failure, and the courage to integrate these lessons into our ongoing narrative that defines true strength. As he sipped coffee each morning from the teacup his mother had broken years ago, Liam was reminded that perfection is fleeting, but the story of survival, transformation, and growth endures. Every crack, every line of gold, told a story of resilience that could never be replicated. And through that process, he had discovered an authenticity and power far beyond what any flawless achievement could provide. Life, he realized, is less about avoiding breaks and more about celebrating the gold that emerges when we repair them. Thank you so much for watching this video until the end. If Liam's story resonated with you, I encourage you to reflect on your own cracks and think about the gold you can use to rebuild yourself stronger and more authentic. If you found value in this message, do not forget to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and subscribe to the channel for more insights and stories that inspire growth and resilience. Remember, your flaws repaired with gold are what make you truly impossible to ignore.